The call came through just after midnight. Fire at Crestwood Tower, apartment 1803. Nothing unusual, or so Ethan Hale thought as he slid into his turnout gear. 6 months on the job, and the routine fires were starting to blend together. A broken heater, a careless cigarette, someone's faulty wiring. Same faces, same streets. They pulled up to Crestwood just as the flames started licking through the windows of the 18th floor. Smoke thick and heavy curled up the stairwells and into the apartments above. The captain gave the orders quickly, and Ethan followed, heart pounding, but steady. He moved with the team up the stairs, past the scorched walls and the occasional crack in the ceiling where paint peeled like dead skin. When they reached the 18th floor landing, a door was taped off with yellow caution tape and a "Do Not Enter" sign crudely scrawled in marker. "That door's been sealed since the last fire," Captain Reed said quietly. "We don't know what's behind it." Ethan hesitated, but curiosity pushed him forward. The fire was spreading fast, and the tape fluttered slightly as heat rushed out from beneath the door. He pulled it open carefully. Inside was darkness, thick and absolute. Not smoke, not flame, just silence. He stepped inside. Seconds passed like hours. The door slammed shut behind him. His radio crackled to life with static, then silence. Then something changed. When he finally pushed the door open and stepped back into the hallway, something was off. The hallway looked the same, but the smell was different. The light was colder. His boots sounded hollow against the floor. He caught his reflection in a cracked mirror across the hall. His face stared back, but the eyes didn't feel like his own. The fire was still raging, but outside, the world had shifted. When he got back to the truck, no one recognized him. His captain called him a stranger. His teammates looked past him like he was a ghost. Ethan realized he had stepped into a world that was almost his own, but wasn't. And he wasn't sure if he could ever get back. Ethan stood outside the fire truck, the sharp scent of smoke still stinging his nostrils. He glanced around at the bustling crew, only none of them seemed to see him the way he expected. "Hey!" he called out to a nearby firefighter, waving his arm. The man barely glanced at him before moving on, busy with a hose. Ethan's voice caught in his throat, and he tried again, more insistently. "Captain Reed, I'm here. It's me, Ethan." Reed looked up, eyes narrowing as if trying to place a stranger at the scene. "We've been running this operation for over an hour," Reed said, voice low and wary. "I don't know who you are, but this isn't your team." Ethan's stomach twisted. "I'm telling you, I came in with you. I was inside the building. I was on the 18th floor. Reed shook his head. "Son, you must be confused. We have no record of anyone entering that floor tonight." Ethan looked past the captain, noticing details that unsettled him. A nearby patrol car with a faded logo he didn't recognize, emergency personnel using equipment different from what he trained with, and radio chatter referencing incidents he'd never heard of. His heart hammered, the fire roared behind him, but the world felt strangely quiet. Was this some elaborate mistake? A nightmare he couldn't wake from? Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, his own phone. The screen displayed a date. July 19th, 1999. He blinked. That wasn't possible. Ethan had no memory of going back decades. His last call was just hours ago. But here he was, lost, between two lives. Ethan stared at the date on the cracked phone screen until his vision blurred. July 19th, 1999. No bars, no notifications, just that impossible number staring back at him like it had always belonged there. He checked his wallet next. His ID looked the same face, same name, but the expiration date was off, issued in 1996. The photo was older too, like something taken when he was barely out of the academy. His hands trembled as he slipped it back into his pocket. The sirens wailed on. Crestwood Tower crackled behind him, but no one gave him a second glance. No one asked if he was hurt or lost or out of place. They acted like he wasn't even there. He wandered away from the crowd, cutting across the smoky street. Ash floated through the air like snow. Familiar buildings surrounded him, but something about them, faded paint, outdated logos, old car models, told him everything was just slightly wrong. He ducked into a nearby bodega. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a greenish pallor across the dusty tile floor. The clerk looked up from a newspaper. Ethan froze. The headline read, Y2K preparations ramp up amid software panic. The paper was dated July 18th, 1999. He left without buying anything. The city outside breathed like a stranger he used to know. Every corner looked just familiar enough to twist his gut. Familiar enough to twist his gut. He made his way to his old apartment complex, except when he arrived, it wasn't there. In its place stood a vacant lot, chain-link fencing curling with rust. A weathered sign out front read, Future Site of Crestwood Apartments, coming 2001. Ethan backed away slowly, cold dread gripping his spine. This wasn't time travel. It wasn't a dream. This place, this version of his life, had simply never had him in it. He didn't go back in time. He went sideways. Ethan sat on a bench across from the empty lot where his apartment was supposed to be, trying to steady his breathing. The familiar trees lining the sidewalk rustled in a different rhythm. The cars rolled past, a touch too quietly. The smell of the city, normally a blend of hot asphalt, engine oil, and street food, was off, cleaner, older, preserved. He fished out his phone again. No signal, no apps. The lock screen refused to budge. It was like holding a relic from a future that hadn't arrived yet. He felt untethered, like a man cut loose from everything that had once grounded him. Friends, family, a home, none of it existed here. He needed answers. His feet moved on instinct, and without consciously deciding to, he walked to Station 42, his firehouse. It took him an hour. When he reached it, a wave of hope rose in his chest, and then vanished. The station was there, but it looked different. The sign above the garage doors read, Station 32. Fresh paint, different logo, and no one he recognized in the lot. He stepped inside anyway. The man behind the front desk looked up, squinting slightly. "Can I help you?" Ethan hesitated. I'm looking for Captain Reed and Lieutenant Mills. Anyone from Station 42? The man frowned. "We haven't had a Station 42 in this city in over a decade. Where are you coming from?" Ethan blinked. "That can't be right. I'm a firefighter. I've worked that station for the last 6 months. The man tilted his head, concern now clouding his face. "You need medical attention?" Ethan backed up, heart pounding again. "Number, I'm sorry. I think—" "You should sit down," the man said, already picking up the phone. But Ethan was already out the door. As he walked down the street, sweat chilling against his skin, a new thought began to form. What if, in this version of his life, he never became a firefighter? What if something, some decision, some moment changed, and that version of Ethan Hale simply didn't exist? And now, the version who did was trapped in a reality that had no place for him. The night pressed in tighter as Ethan wandered aimlessly through streets that had once been home. The city lights flickered dimmer here, or maybe he was just imagining it, reaching for familiarity in the unfamiliar. His stomach gnawed at him, but he wasn't ready to sit down. He wasn't ready to accept that none of this was temporary. He stopped at a payphone. An honest-to-God coin-operated payphone bolted into a brick wall like a museum piece that still functioned. He dug in his pockets, found a quarter, and hesitated before dialing. His fingers moved automatically, the number to his parents' house. It rang 3 times. Then a voice answered. Not his mother's. "Hello," said an older man, cautious. Ethan's throat clenched. "Is this the Hale residence?" Silence. Then, "No, I think you have the wrong number." Click. He stood there, listening to the dial tone until it burned into his ear. They didn't live there. or never had. He tried again. This time, a friend from the academy, Kyle, someone who would remember him, who had to. Another stranger, another dead end. Ethan leaned into the booth's cool glass, eyes shut, breathing hard. This wasn't an illusion. He wasn't dreaming. He was somewhere else, a version of his city, his life, where all the paths he'd walked had either never existed or twisted off in directions he'd never taken. He stumbled back onto the sidewalk and for the first time let himself admit what had been gnawing at him since the moment he stepped through the smoke-filled hallway in Crestwood Tower. He wasn't going back. No fire to fight his way through. No glowing portal to slip into again. No one searching for him. This was his life now. Just not his life. By morning, Ethan had found a bus bench to sleep on, though sleep never really came. He sat there watching the light change, watching this version of the world slowly wake up around him. It was eerie how normal everything seemed. People walked their dogs, newspapers thudded onto driveways, kids laughed at a corner stop waiting for a school bus. Everything looked like a faded photograph of his life, familiar but wrong in ways he couldn't explain. He needed money, a place to stay, a plan. He drifted toward a corner diner, one of those places that still served coffee for under $1 and didn't ask questions when you sat at the counter looking like hell. He ordered toast and coffee and said as little as possible. The waitress, older, kind-eyed, gave him a look but didn't press. When she brought the check, he pretended to fumble, through his pockets. "Sorry," he said quietly. "Think I left my wallet somewhere." She eyed him for a moment, then shrugged. "You look like you've had a rough night. Don't worry about it." Ethan looked up, something catching in his throat. "Thank you." The coffee was lukewarm, the toast was dry. But he ate like it might be the last normal thing he'd get for days. Afterward, he wandered again, but this time with purpose. He walked past construction sites, through parks, along rows of apartment buildings, reading signs, watching people, trying to stitch together a map of this new world. Then he saw it. A bulletin board in a corner pharmacy. Tacked among flyers for missing cats, guitar lessons, and babysitting gigs was a card. Need work? No questions asked. A number, handwritten in red ink. Beneath it, 3 words, period. Short-term, discreet, cash. It felt like a lifeline or a trap. But Ethan didn't hesitate. He tore the number free and slipped it into his jacket. He had no identity in this place, no anchor. But if this version of the world didn't recognize him, maybe he could become someone new. And maybe, if he was lucky, he'd learn how the hell this had happened. Ethan found a payphone tucked behind a liquor store, its receiver sticky with grime and age. He glanced around once before dialing the number on the red-inked card. It rang 4 times. Then a click. A voice answered, deep and deliberate. "Name?" Ethan hesitated. "James," he said, the first name that came to mind. "James," the voice repeated as if writing it down. "Meet at 408 Baynard Avenue, rear entrance, knock twice, pause, then once more, 15 minutes. Click. No questions, no explanation. The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone a second longer, then hung up. He didn't know what he expected, maybe a warning siren or some final chance to back out. But instead, he was left with the silent urgency of a man with no options. Baynard Avenue was 12 blocks west. He jogged most of it, mind racing. His legs felt like sandbags under him, but the momentum kept him upright. He found the address, a squat beige building behind a chain-link fence. The rear entrance looked more like a loading dock than a door, a rusted metal platform, a heavy steel door with no sign. Oh, he knocked twice, waited, then once more. The door opened. A man in a blue windbreaker with sun-damaged skin and a shaved head gave him a single nod and stepped aside. No questions. Ethan entered. The inside looked like a garage-turned-warehouse. Plastic bins stacked floor to ceiling, heavy-duty lights rigged to exposed rafters, the tang of cleaning chemicals and cardboard in the air. A few others stood nearby. One of them, a young guy in a leather jacket, eyed Ethan curiously, but said nothing. The windbreaker man finally spoke. 3-hour shift, unload boxes, stack 'em by label, no talking, no phones, payment at the end, cash. You don't like it, door's right there. Ethan gave a short nod. I'm in. The work was hard, monotonous, and strangely grounding. Every crate he lifted was like an anchor, something real, physical, that he could grasp in this world where nothing else made sense. He didn't care what was in them. He didn't care who these people were. All he cared about was surviving long enough to figure out why he was here. And maybe, just maybe, if there was a way to undo it. By the end of the shift, Ethan's shoulders ached and his hands were raw. Sweat soaked the back of his borrowed coat. But for the first time in what felt like days, he had something to show for his effort. A small white envelope handed to him without a word. Inside was cash, small bills, enough for a couple nights at a motel and maybe another meal or two if he stretched it. The man in the windbreaker gave him a sideways look as he pulled the garage door shut behind them. Same time tomorrow, he said simply, then walked off toward a dark green van waiting at the curb. Ethan didn't answer. He just turned and started walking. He didn't know where he was going yet, but the cash felt like a foothold, something solid in the slipping landscape of his new reality. He used part of it to buy a change of clothes from a thrift store, plain jeans, a jacket with fewer holes, boots that didn't scream, desperate. Then he checked into a rundown motel on 11th Street, handed over his envelope without opening it, and collapsed onto the creaking mattress without bothering to undress. Sleep came slow, and when it did, it brought no peace. He dreamed of fire, always fire, the sound of it roaring up stairwells, the feeling of that heat pressing down on him. Except in the dream, there were no victims, no hoses, no escape. Just the doorway in the back hall, the one he walked through without thinking. He woke up gasping, sweat pouring down his neck, fists clenched in the sheets. The clock on the nightstand blinked 3:11 a.m. He sat there, breathing heavy in the silence, until he noticed the glow under the door. Not fire, not even a flicker, just steady white light, pale and quiet. Ethan stood slowly, padded to the door, and pressed his eye to the peephole. Nothing, just the hallway. He opened the door a crack. Empty. No sound, no footsteps. Just the quiet hum of cheap motel power and an exit sign glowing down the hall. But something about the air had changed. He shut the door slowly, locked it, then double-checked the window, the bathroom, every inch of the room. Nothing out of place. And yet, this world didn't feel any closer to making sense. If anything, it felt like he'd only peeled back the first layer and whatever was beneath it. Bridget was waiting for him to notice. The next morning, Ethan sat at the edge of the motel bed, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror above the dresser. His face looked older somehow, worn, foreign, like he'd lived 2 lifetimes since the fire. He stuffed the remaining cash into his jacket pocket and left. Before heading back to the warehouse job, he took a detour. A question had been gnawing at him since the moment he realized this version of his life was off. If this world had a version of him, where was that Ethan? He needed answers. So he took a city bus across town to Station 24. It still stood where it always had. Red brick, chrome fixtures, that familiar old fire engine parked out front. And when he got closer, he could smell it. The mingled scent of diesel, smoke, and coffee grounds. His throat tightened.